this Sabbath day with once again, which is approaching. We thank you for this opportunity to get together and honor your appointed time. We pray, Father, that your Spirit, your breath lead us as we go through Deuteronomy and also the second letter of Peter. This we pray as your humble servants. Amen. Okay, we're on Deuteronomy chapter 23. Verse 1 says, "No one who is emasculated or has his male organ cut off shall enter the assembly of Yahweh." Well, I think the thing to figure out here is, what is the assembly of Yahweh? Does that mean if a man is emasculated or castrated, he can't be a part of the nation of Israel? No, that's not what that means. That means he can't be a part of the gatherings of all the men 3 times a year. He can't be a part of that. That's what that means. In Deuteronomy 16, verse 16, 3 times in a year all your males shall appear before Yahweh your Elohim in a place which he chooses, at the feast of unleavened bread, and at the feast of weeks, and at the feast of booths. They shall not appear before Yahweh empty-handed. Now that's what they're not allowed to attend. And there's others that aren't allowed to attend too, and he talks about this. "No one of illegitimate birth shall enter the assembly of Yahweh. None of his descendants, even to the 10th generation, shall enter the assembly of Yahweh." Elohim gives special attention to moral purity. If a child is illegitimate, he can't participate in the assembly of Yahweh. And that's passed down through the 10th generation. Verses 3 and 4. "No Ammonite or Moabite shall enter the assembly of Yahweh. None of their descendants, even to the 10th generation, shall ever enter the assembly of Yahweh, because they did not meet you with food and water on the way when you came out of Egypt, and because they hired against you Balaam, son of Beor, from Pethor of Mesopotamia, to curse you." Well, if someone is an Ammonite or a Moabite, they can't enter the assembly of Yahweh. That's even to the 10th generation. Now, these people cannot casually participate in the assembly as onlookers or as enemies of Elohim's people. It's kind of interesting. When did you last meet an Ammonite? Do you remember?
You never know.
Well, that's true. You never know. Actually, we got a pretty good idea. We'll talk about that too here in a minute. You know, what was Ruth? Where was she from?
She's a
Moabitess, right? Right? So, if we look at that, you can say it no longer applied because she was more than 10 generations removed from that group. It's some 400 years later where we read about Ruth. So, regardless of that, though, Ruth, she denied her people, she denied their gods, and she became a part of Israel. She, in Ruth 1, we read about her, starting in verse 15. "Then she said, Behold, your sister-in-law has gone back to her people and her gods. Return after your sister-in-law. But Ruth said, Do not urge me to leave you or turn back from following you, for where you go, I will go. Where you lodge, I will lodge. Your people shall be my people, and your Elohim my Elohim. Where you die, I will die, and there I will be buried. Thus may Yahweh do to me, and worse, if anything but death parts you and me." And then in Ruth 4, starting in verse 10, we read, "Moreover, I have acquired Ruth the Moabitess, the widow of Mahlon, to be my wife in order to raise up the name of the deceased on his inheritance, so that the name of the deceased may not be cut off from his brothers or from the court of his birthplace. You are witnesses today." And all the people who were in the court and the elders said, "We are witnesses. May Yahweh make the woman who is coming into your home like Rachel and Leah, both of whom built the house of Israel. And may you achieve wealth in Ephrathah and become famous in Bethlehem. Moreover, may your house be like the house of Perez, whom Tamar bore to Judah, through the offspring which Yahweh shall give you by this young woman." So Boaz took Ruth, and she became his wife, and he went into her, and Yahweh enabled her to conceive, and she gave birth to a son. Then the women said to Naomi, "Blessed is Yahweh, who has not left you without a redeemer today, and may his name become famous in Israel." Now, this also falls in line with with teaching in Isaiah 56, starting at verse 3, where we read, "Let not the foreigner who has joined himself to Yahweh say, Yahweh will surely separate me from his people. Neither let the eunuch say, Behold, I'm a dry tree. For thus says Yahweh to the eunuchs who keep my Sabbaths and choose what pleases me and hold fast to my covenant. To them I will give in my house and within my walls a memorial and a name better than that of sons and daughters. I will give them an everlasting name which will not be cut off. Also the foreigners who join themselves to Yahweh to minister to him, to love the name of Yahweh, to be his servants, to everyone who keeps from profaning the Sabbath and holds fast to my covenant. Even those I will bring to my holy mountain and make them joyful in my house of prayer. Their burnt offerings and their sacrifices will be acceptable on my altar, for my house will be called a house of prayer for all the peoples." Okay, now, I still don't know it says the eunuchs and the foreigners can participate in those 3 times a year, but he said they'll still have a name greater than the sons and daughters.
Well, it says for all my people, for all the people, not my people.
Yeah, it'll be a house of prayer for all the peoples, yes. Uh-huh.
Pagan.
Well, not to come, it'll be, they can join. If one swears allegiance to Elohim and takes his mark, his sign, then he's a part of Israel. In Exodus 31, verse 13, "But as for you, speak to the sons of Israel, saying, You shall surely observe my Sabbaths, for this is a sign between me and you throughout your generations, that you may know that I am Yahweh who sanctifies you." So there's a sign of being his, is obeying the Sabbath day. In Exodus 31, verses 16 and 17, we read, "So the sons of Israel shall observe the Sabbath to celebrate the Sabbath throughout their generations as a perpetual covenant. It's a sign between me and the sons of Israel forever. For in 6 days Yahweh made heaven and earth, but on the 7th day he ceased from labor and was refreshed." In Deuteronomy 6, verses 6 through 8, "And these words which I'm commanding you today shall be on your heart. You shall teach them diligently to your sons, shall talk of them when you sit in your house, when you walk by the way, when you lie down, when you rise up. You shall bind them as a sign on your hand. They shall be as frontals on your forehead." Now, get back to these Ammonites and these Moabites. There's a different story. They're part of the group that actually the Arabs descended from. And they take a different sign, a different mark, which is kind of an allegiance to Allah is what it is. We read in Revelation 13, verses 16 and 17, "He causes all, the small and the great, the rich and the poor, and the free men and the slaves to be given a mark on their right hand or on their forehead. He provides that no one should be able to buy or sell except the one who has the mark, either the name of the beast or the number of his name." Now, if you have the mark of Elohim, it says you'll bind his Torah as a sign in your hand, as if it's a sign in your hand and as if you have frontals on your forehead. In other words, it'll be obvious that you're a follower of Torah. And in the same way, that mark, it's obvious what that mark is. It's not that they literally have anything on their right hand or on their forehead. Any questions on that? It's just, you can tell. They may as well carry a sign.
Yeah, they can pick us out real quick.
Yeah, they can pick us out real good. They're good at it too, aren't they? Uh-huh. Yeah, they really can. Verse 5. "Nevertheless, Yahweh your Elohim was not willing to listen to Balaam, but Yahweh your Elohim turned the curse into a blessing for you, because Yahweh your Elohim loves you." The account of this is given in Numbers 22 and 23. Balak, he hired Balaam to curse Israel. And Balaam couldn't do it because Elohim wouldn't let him do it. Verse 6, "You shall never seek their peace or their prosperity all your days." This is in reference to making a peace with the people of Ammon and Moab. We are not to seek the wealth of these pagan nations. And it's interesting too, what do you see in those nations? You see a lot of wealth. Among the top, And that's what a lot of the world has glommed onto, wanted to be a part of that wealth. We're not to seek the wealth of those pagan nations. We will be lured by their wealth and to their gods. And that's not allowed. In Numbers 13, Nehemiah 13, verses 23 through 25. In those days, I also saw that the Jews had married women from Ashdod, Ammon, and Moab. As for their children, half spoken the language of Ashdod. None of them was able to speak the language of Judah, but the language of his own people. So I contended with them and cursed them and struck some of them and pulled out their hair and made them swear by Elohim, you shall not give your daughters to their sons, nor take of their daughters for your sons or for yourselves. Yeah, Nehemiah threw a fit when he got to that land and found that out. Oh, he's still going here. Yeah, verses 26 and 27. Did not Solomon, king of Israel, sin regarding these things? Yet among the many nations there was no king like him, and he was loved by his Elohim, and Elohim made him king over all Israel. Nevertheless, the foreign women caused even him to sin. Do we then hear about you, that you've committed all this great evil by acting unfaithfully against our Elohim by marrying foreign women? You got to keep in mind now, Solomon was called the wisest man that ever lived, right? Did he know Elohim? Did he know him well? But what happened when he married foreign women? He went straight down. He went straight down. Now, here's the point. You think you're better than Solomon? You'll go right down the tubes. And that was supposed to be an object lesson for the rest of us. His whole life is. And he wrote about it in Ecclesiastes. Told us all about it. All the stuff that he did. And what it really meant, which was bupkis. Verse 7. You shall not detest an Edomite, for he is your brother. You shall not detest an Egyptian, because you were an alien in his land. The Edomites were descendants of Esau. Now, Esau was Jacob's brother. They were brothers. They're not to be hated, and neither are the Egyptians. Now, the problem is in, definitively defining between an Ammonite and a Moabite and these other groups that the Arabs have descended from. That's difficult. See, this is in Psalm 83, and it talks about these guys. Starting in verse 1, O Elohim, do not remain quiet. Do not be silent, and O Elohim, do not be still. For behold, your enemies make an uproar. Those who hate you have exalted themselves. They make shrewd plans against your people and conspire against your treasured ones. They have said, come and let us wipe them out as a nation, that the name of Israel be remembered no more. It's hard to believe that this was some 3,000 years ago, because it could have been yesterday's paper. For they have conspired against you with one mind. Against you do they make a covenant. The tents of Edom and the Ishmaelites, Moab and the Hagrites, Gebal and Ammon and Amalek, Philistia with the inhabitants of Tyre. Assyria has also joined them. They've become a help to the children of Lot. Think about it. Selah. In this day, the best thing to do is, in my opinion, not to seek peace with them, nor to seek prosperity from them. That's just how I see it. Deuteronomy 23, verse 8. The sons of the third generation who are born to them may enter the assembly of Yahweh. Egyptians and Edomites from the third generation on can participate in the assembly of Yahweh. Verse 9, when you go out as an army against your enemies, then you shall keep yourself from every evil thing. Elohim expects his people to be obedient to his Torah even in times of great stress. Verses 10 and 11. If there is among you any man who is unclean because of a nocturnal emission, then he must go outside the camp. He may not re-enter the camp. But it shall be when evening approaches, he shall bathe himself with water, and at sundown he may re-enter the camp. Well, they cover everything, don't they? Elohim's laws of cleanliness are important and good for the health of the people. Verse 12, you shall also have a place outside the camp and go there. The place referred to is a latrine. The bathroom is to be outside the camp. Now, virtually all other cultures at the same time used the same ground they lived on as a bathroom. That's just a fact of history. This leads to pollution of the food and water supply, sickness, and ultimately death. Many civilizations were destroyed because of this. Some Indian civilizations in this country have destroyed themselves in the past due to this. England in the 17th and 18th centuries had horrible conditions, but because they didn't follow this. You know, why wouldn't you follow that? Because you're a Christian, you don't have to. Okay? Let's read about this just a little bit. The housing conditions in London during the 17th and 18th century were incredibly bad, though improved by medieval standards. A huge floating population was largely housed as weekly tenants in furnished rooms. Those who could not find lodging slept in alehouses, garrets, in night cellars, latrines with cesspits, in doorways and in streets. Many simply slept in rented chairs in pubs where they were permanent guests. Coffee houses and pubs were desirable addresses for those establishing themselves in London. Methane, or swamp gas, generated by cesspits caught fire, exploded, and brought instant death to those trapped in sealed homes. Hydrogen sulfide gases overwhelmed victims as they slept, their lungs paralyzed by the gas. It's estimated that several 100,000 Londoners perished from typhoid, cholera, plague, and pestilence before it was understood that the city was dying from its own filth. I hear typhoid's making a comeback in San Francisco. On the streets of San Francisco. That's a different show than it used to be, the streets of San Francisco. Remember Carl Malden? Not no more. It's not Carl Malden anymore. The streets have changed. Verse 13. You shall have a spade among your tools. It shall be when you sit down outside, you shall dig with it and shall turn to cover up your excrement. Your waste is to be buried outside the camp. This is an amazing lesson in what we know today to be microbiology. Animals outside the camp would not feed on human waste and then be killed and eaten by the people. That's not what you want. Verse 14. Since Yahweh your Elohim walks in the midst of your camp to deliver you and to defeat your enemies before you, therefore your camp must be holy, and he must not see anything indecent among you, lest he turn away from you. You know, so he says, hey, I'm going to be in the midst of your camp, and you better make it set apart. You better not make it common like the other nations. Make it set apart, and those rules that he has for making it set apart. No paganism. The bathrooms are outside the camp. Why have all these requirements? It's for their own good. It's for their own good. He can't say, but if you do these things, I'll still tolerate you and love you. No, he doesn't say that. He says, I'll turn away from you. I'll be gone. In Leviticus 26, verse 12, I will also walk among you and be your Elohim, and you shall be my people. Verses 15 and 16 of Deuteronomy 23. You shall not hand over to his master a slave who has escaped from his master to you. He shall live with you in your midst, in the place which he shall choose, in one of your towns where it pleases him. You shall not mistreat him. The implication here is for slaves that escape from other countries and they go into Israel. And he says here, you don't hand them back. Why not? Why not? Well, that's a good point, because there were slaves in Egypt too. And here's the thing. Was the slavery in Egypt, was it justified? No. Slavery has never been justified, except in Israel, because that's what they used to, instead of incarceration or physical punishment. You become a slave. If you indebt yourself so deep that you can't feed your family or whatever, you might have to sell yourself as an indentured servant, as a slave for a period of time. But you see, those nations didn't do that. They would just turn people into slaves. And cruel and horrible treatment would follow. So he says, he shall live with you in your midst, in the place which he shall choose, in one of your towns where it pleases him. You will not mistreat him. Israel is to treat the rich stranger and the poor stranger in the same manner. And James talks about this in James chapter 2, the first 6 verses. My brethren, do not hold your faithfulness in our glorious Master Yeshua Messiah with an attitude of personal favoritism. For if a man comes into your assembly with a gold ring and dressed in fine clothes, and there also comes in a poor man in dirty clothes, you shall pay special attention to the one who is wearing the fine clothes, and say, you sit here in a good place, and you say to the poor man, you stand over here or sit down by my footstool. Have you not made distinctions among yourselves, even become judges with evil motives? Listen, my beloved brethren, did not Elohim choose the poor of this world to be rich in faithfulness and heirs of the kingdom, which he promised to those who love him? But you have dishonored the poor man. Is it not the rich who oppress you and personally drag you into court? Well, that's a good point. That's a good point. Verse 17. None of the daughters of Israel shall be a cult prostitute, nor any of the sons of Israel be a cult prostitute. Elohim didn't allow his people to practice the immorality of the other nations. And that's just the way it is. If a priest's daughter is a prostitute, by the way, what happens to her? Does anybody remember? Close. This has a different punishment. Leviticus 21:9. Also, the daughter of any priest, if she profanes herself by harlotry, she profanes her father, she shall be burned with fire. Ugh.
That's the worst death.
I'd say it's the worst death, too. Verse 18, Deuteronomy 23. You shall not bring the hire of a harlot or the wages of a dog into the house of Yahweh your Elohim, for any votive offering, for both of these are an abomination to Yahweh your Elohim. Elohim doesn't need our money. Now, if we want to give it freely and offer it to help others and so forth, that's showing the love to your brother. But don't think that Elohim needs it.
Would the wages of a dog be the earnings that a person got from a Gentile?
From what?
A Gentile?
No. The wages of a dog, that's a male prostitute.
Oh. I got you.
Yeah, it's not good stuff. Verse 19, you shall not charge interest to your countrymen, interest on money, food, or anything that may be loaned at interest. Elohim's people cannot take advantage of a brother in need. It seems to apply to doing business with a fellow Israelite in any way. We should not charge interest, but them foreigners, you can charge them interest. Verse 20. You may charge interest to a foreigner, but to your countrymen you shall not charge interest, so that Yahweh your Elohim may bless you in all that you undertake in the land which you are about to enter to possess. A foreigner would surely charge any one of his people interest if he borrowed something. So an Israelite may do likewise to a non-brother, non-believer. Verse 21. When you make a vow to Yahweh your Elohim, you shall not delay to pay it. For it would be sin in you, and Yahweh your Elohim will surely require it of you. Vows are voluntarily made, but once made, they are a sacred obligation. Elohim promised his eternal faithfulness to Israel and demanded complete obedience. Verse 22, However, if you refrain from vowing, it would not be sin in you. Don't make a vow if you don't intend to keep it. And I guess to put it even more strongly, don't make a vow if you're not going to keep it. Not just do your best. Verse 23, you shall be careful to perform what goes out from your lips, just as you have voluntarily vowed to Yahweh your Elohim what you have promised. Elohim takes our vows very, very, very seriously. And what's a vow comprised of? It's just your word, right? That's really just what you say. Verse 24, when you enter your neighbor's vineyard, then you may eat grapes until you're fully satisfied, but you shall not put any in your basket. That's just good rules here. Bathroom outside the camp. You can't stock up on your neighbor's vineyard. Verse 25, when you enter your neighbor's standing grain, then you may pluck the heads with your hand, but you shall not wield a sickle in your neighbor's standing grain. This is what Yeshua was doing with his disciples, by the way. In Matthew 12, verses 1 and 2, we read, At that time Yeshua went on the Sabbath through the grain fields, and his disciples became hungry and began to pick the heads of grain and eat. But when the Pharisees saw it, they said to him, Behold, your disciples do what is not lawful to do on the Sabbath. Now, in Luke's rendition of this, it says that they rubbed the grain in their hands to get the husks off. You know, there's another name for that. I call that preparing your food. And people ask about preparing food on the Sabbath, and that's one of the things I point to.